Hey guys, my name is Brooke. Welcome to my channel, and today I want to talk about money. I realized recently that I was optimizing everything in my life around money and for money, but what I didn't realize or understand was how much this was actually impacting my life. About 3 years ago, my husband and I invested in a mentorship program around money and the psychology of money and how we apply that to how we actually show up and use money and our beliefs around money. And this program was really the catalyst for me in unlearning these patterns that I had built throughout my whole life. The main thing that really came up for me was that I use money as a shield, or I used it as a shield, I suppose. I was scared of spending it. I felt like I needed to hoard it and keep as much of it as I could because I was scared of something happening, or I was scared of not having enough. And it was really interesting to unpack this because at the time, my husband and I were working through some bigger money decisions around saving up to buy a house. We wanted to do an overseas trip. And we only had one savings account that everything was falling into. And then whenever we needed it, we'd have to pull out of that account. And that for me created so much guilt because in my mind, I was like, we need this money to save up for the house. And anytime we're pulling out of that to do something fun or to put towards a trip or to put towards anything, even like an emergency that we needed to pay for, it still felt like I was pulling us backwards and we were getting off track. And obviously, this caused a lot of bickering between my husband and I because he has a very different kind of belief system around money. And we were able to unpack the differences that we both have as we went through this program. And it was really interesting. So I think about how I grew up around money. I was born into a family that were really good at saving. My parents were amazing at keeping their money and using it and allocating it for things that mattered a lot to them. And the top of that list was travel. So what that meant for my brother and I as we were growing up is we got to travel a lot. We got to see a lot of different places, and I'm very grateful for that because I, potentially otherwise wouldn't have been able to travel that much, and it really instilled a love of traveling for me. What also happened though was that because the money went towards traveling, it also meant that I internalized this belief that if it wasn't used for something big, then it wasn't worth spending. And the way that this kind of played out in my life was as a young adult, as I started to make money as I was working, I would say no to experiences. I would choose the cheapest thing on the menu, which I still struggle with sometimes. I would turn down, lots of different things like buying new clothes or even thinking about like getting something for my car. I would put it off because I was so worried about spending money and it all felt like a waste to me. And I think this was really important for me to kind of dive into because it's not that my parents were wrong. Like I said, they taught me really, really valuable lessons about money and how to save and how to make sure that it is aligned with what you value. But the problem was that I did value some of the things that I was giving up. I did value going out and eating with my friends. I did value being able to spend $20 to get into a show at the pub in my hometown because a lot of my friends were in the bands and I really loved that. I would feel so guilty though. I would feel really, really bad about the fact that I was spending money. And I remember I used to try and like shove my face full of food before I left the house so that when I got out, I wouldn't need to eat. Or I would drink at home. I would make sure I just bought like the cheapest alcohol I could find, drink it at home. So then once I was out, I wouldn't need to spend a penny more. And of course, this was not great for me health wise in that example, but also just the stuff that I missed out on as a young adult in my 20s. Where I think about where I am now at 30, that those opportunities, they don't exist anymore, or they do, but in a different way because I've got a family now and I'm just in a different place where I'm not interested in going to the pub and watching a band play live late into the night. I want to be in bed by 9 o'clock. And so it's just interesting to think about how this belief around saving, how it has shaped so many of the decisions that I made, big and small. and how that's also had an impact on the people around me. And so this cost for me has been really widespread, and it's been challenging to work through. But that has been one of the biggest things that has come out of doing this program, is starting to have opportunities to just recognize and sit in the fact that these beliefs are governing the decisions that I make. They are stopping me from doing the things that I want, and realizing that my values are not the same as my parents' values. And that's okay. Like the stuff that they were optimizing for was right for them, and it's not wrong. It just wasn't right for me. And that's been something that I've been practicing a lot in the last couple of years, is giving myself opportunities to actually flex this muscle of doing things differently, and being able to say yes to experiences, and being able to say yes to eating out and buying the food that I want off the menu, which probably seems really small to some people. But for me, it has been huge. Just this permission to kind of show up and to spend money in a way that makes sense for me. And also, not spend money in ways that don't make sense for me. So really trying to figure out, like, what is that alignment? What actually matters to me? And, another example at a little bit of a bigger scale was when we went over to Europe. When we made this trip happen, we decided that we were going to travel around, and we didn't want to take the train. We wanted to drive because my husband loves driving. And so at first, I think for sure I was going to choose the cheapest, dingiest old car that I could find to rent, because, don't spend money. Spend the least amount of money possible that we can still physically do the trip, but we don't have to spend any more than we need to. Whereas after going through this program and after kind of examining these beliefs, I was able to kind of sit back and go, okay, well, what do we actually want out of this trip, and where's the value coming from? For us, it was being able to comfortably sit in this car and drive to different places and be able to leave our luggage in the back of the car without being worried about, first of all, it not fitting, but then also about it being visible if we are parking in a public space. And so instead of renting this dingy old car, we rented a beautiful car. And again, for some people, it was probably just a normal car, but for us, when we rocked up that day to pick it up from the rental place, and we stepped in and we saw like the lights that lit up around the front and along the doors, like I felt like a millionaire. I felt so good because it was something that was in alignment for me. And we had the best time just traveling around. This car was so comfortable, and it was so worth it to spend that money. But Brooke 5 years ago wouldn't have even had the capacity to make that decision, because I would have felt so guilty about spending that money. Another really amazing example that happened during the trip is one day we were in Grindelwald in Switzerland, and there was a few different touristy things that were very popular that everyone was kind of going to. And my husband and I aren't really big fans of crowds, so we wanted to do something different. And he's been talking about wanting to do like electric bike riding up a mountain, whatever, for a long time. And so we found a shop that day, and he really wanted to rent these bikes. And I instead, again, what I would have done in the past was I would have come up with probably 5-10 different reasons as to why we shouldn't. But this time, the only hesitation that I had was that I'm not that confident on a bike. So I was a little bit nervous. But we just went for it. I wasn't worried about the cost. I wasn't worried about anything, because I was able to recognize that this trip was, the whole point of it was for him and I to be able to have time to do fun things together before we started our family. And this was an opportunity to bike up a mountain in Switzerland. It was absolutely amazing. There was hardly anyone there. When we got to the top, it was breathtaking. It was very hot, but luckily, because it was an e-bike, it was fine. But I had the best time, and it felt like such a relief in my nervous system to be able to go, oh, okay, we can spend money and we're still safe. We're okay. And it actually felt so good because it was the best day. My husband loved it, and we got so much out of it. We still talk about it all the time. We pull up the photos, and it's been such an amazing dividend on a memory. So absolutely worth it. And without doing this work and without kind of examining where these beliefs were coming from for me, I never would have been able to have that experience and that opportunity. And so I think really kind of the overarching theme here is that it's not that saving money is wrong. It's just not the full truth. And that's what I'm really kind of thinking about now is I still want to save money. I still want to put it towards things that matter to me, saving up for the next trip or saving up for when we have our next baby or things like that. But what I'm detaching myself from is this idea that being careful with my money and not spending it on anything is being responsible, because that's not the full truth. It is part of the truth, but it's not the whole story. And the longer that I was living in that reality, the more that I was actually missing out on. And so now what I'm trying to do is be really intentional about where is my money going? How am I using it to optimize my life? And I mentioned at the beginning of this video that most of my life, my decisions have been around optimizing for money, choosing the cheaper thing, doing it myself, fumbling around and trying to figure out on my own. Whereas now I'm optimizing for time. I am using money as a tool to be able to buy back time, to be able to collapse time so that I can get to my goals faster, so that I can, instead of trying to figure out how to do something by myself, I can hire someone who does that for their full-time job. And they've already got the expertise. They've already made the mistakes. They've already learned all the lessons. Instead of me having to do that all by myself, I can just learn off of them. And then I can get to wherever it is that I want to go faster. And this has been applicable both in my personal life, but also in business. And it has really made such a big difference for me. And I'm continuing to learn this lesson. I'm continuing to push myself. But I think this next level is not only am I going to invest in services or in projects that are going to make my life better, I'm also going to invest in me. Because at the end of the day, the best investment that you can actually make is in your own learning, is in your own capital. Because the more that I learn, the more that I grow, the more that I can then use those skills and use that learning to be able to help other people and to be able to make a bigger impact and to be able to grow this business and all the things that I want to do. And so I don't have this fully resolved yet. I'm still figuring it out, but I have had a lot of reps now to be able to start flexing that muscle. And I started really small, and then I was able to do some of those big things that I mentioned earlier. And I know that it's only going to continue getting bigger from here, but I wanted to share because this might resonate with someone else. And that's the whole point, isn't it? Is to show up and to share and to learn together. All right, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, evening, morning, whatever time it is that you are listening to this, and I will catch you on the next one.